We are going to now take you on the beautiful journey of wide receivers. We've talked about different positions throughout this teaching series. We talked about the three technique. We talked about the Mike linebacker, talked about tight end and the importance of the relationship with the quarterback when we got to spread 201. We've kind of been all over the field a little bit. Today, we're going to talk about the wide receiver position because I think what happens sometimes, especially in recruiting, especially maybe even in the transfer portal, we're talking about getting a wide receiver or a burner on the outside, whatever that may be. But there are different types of wide receivers, different positions of wide receiver, and they have different jobs, different responsibilities, and may even profile differently as players. So we're going to go over three of them today, H, X, and Z. That should make perfect sense to you. And if it does make perfect sense to you, probably not the video for you. If it doesn't, let's get into it. So let's start, young Ian, here. You wanted to start with the X receiver, right? Why would you want to start, just from a pedagogical point of view, why are we starting with the X wide receiver?
I think the X is like the original receiver.
Okay.
Like in older formations before football evolved in the spread direction it's gone in, sometimes you'd have like one guy be like, hey, let's send just one guy out there. And he'll be out there to catch the ball and see if he can take anybody with him. And originally that was called the split end position because it's like the end guy on the line, but he's split out. And the split end is the original X. It evolved into the X receiver, but that's where he came from. And it's a really sad story.
Well, hold on. There's a sad story to how the split end became the X.
No, I have this consolate weeping going on.
Oh, that's okay.
Maybe you can't hear that.
You know, it's your progeny, Ian. You made some decisions, and we're all the beneficiary of those decisions. So don't worry about it at all. It's fine.
Yeah, don't cash out those assets for a little while. Give me more time to develop those things.
Okay, great.
So the X receiver is like the original lineup out wide, and with Texas and under Sark's offense, the X and Z are very similar. Sometimes what people think of with a split end, maybe a little more of a Z in Sark's offense. But the idea for Sark is that the X receiver lines up next to the H. And because the H is usually a slot or an off-ball tight end, that means the X is the one that's on the line of scrimmage. It also means that in Sark's offense, the X receiver is usually lined up to the far side of the field. Now, a lot of Texas fans had drilled into their mind during the Tom Herman era that the X receiver goes in the short side of the boundary and he just stays there all the time. And that was Colin Johnson and Malcolm Epps for a little bit. But that's not how Sark does it. For Sark, it's basically your speed guy who's like, who are we going to place way out wide in space to threaten down the field? And maybe we'll move him around because Sark moves everybody around. The positions are not at all static for Sarkisian. But so this is your Xavier Worthy. This is where we wondered if DeAndre Moore would play. This is where I believe Matthew Golden played last year.
So what we're profiling here, this is on, at least in this example, we're putting somebody on the outside. Generally, from what we've learned from our coverage videos, very likely this person's going to be one-on-one, unless they're going to get some safety help. So you're looking for a burner here. Is that safe to say?
That's exactly right.
And so when we talk about, let me reframe this a little bit, because sometimes in the discussion, we obviously talk about the Z, the Y, the X, but more often than not, you'll hear people talk about a number one receiver. Is the number one receiver in this format the X receiver or the Z receiver?
For Sark, it's usually the Z.
Okay.
He seems to like the Z both for moving him around to find targets, and also the Z. Should we just get into the Z?
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
The Z is the descendant of what old-time football would have called the flanker. So the flanker would be your second wide receiver. He would flank. I don't know who he even flanked. That's a little bit beyond my historian isn't quite sure who he flanked. But the flanker was usually a little bit off the ball, so he could move back and forth in the formation, like in motion. If you're up on the line of scrimmage, you cannot go in motion because now your offense no longer meets the rules of having 7 guys on the line of scrimmage. That's very important in receiver positions and how receivers work. Is that you have to have 7 guys on the line of scrimmage to run a legal play. And so your offensive line accounts for 5, and now you need 2 more. And if your tight end is lined up like a normal tight end, like this one is, the Y, then you only need 1 receiver to do it. So it's your X, usually. But if he's off the ball, now you need 2 receivers to line up on the line of scrimmage. Anyway, the Z is the flanker in old school terminology. For Sark, he aligns with the tight end. So wherever the tight end goes, he's going to be the outside guy to the tight end side. Even if the tight end were over on the other side of the field, he would still be like the next guy outside of him, right? Because of that, the Z receiver for Sark usually lines up in the boundary. And Sark often plays the tight end off the ball. So the Z receiver is also often on the line of scrimmage in the boundary. And so he's in confined space. He's got maybe the other team's top corner on him. He's got the safety hanging out nearby. The linebackers are nearby. So you often end up wanting more of a big guy that can catch contested passes and work in limited space and not get bullied. So you end up with a guy that sounds an awful lot like Tom Herman's X receiver, just further confusing to fans.
Yeah, you did a good job there. So why would this be classified as the number one receiver, though, just in terms of Sark's mentality? If they say, like, who our number one is this, I'm assuming, is this where we would put Wingo or we put him at X?
We expect Wingo here.
Yeah, that would make sense because he's a big kid.
He's a big, yeah. There's a couple reasons why. One is that the Z receiver is closer than the X. The X being way down there, it's kind of a guy that you just take a shot to every now and again to see if you can back the defense up. The Z receiver is going to end up being in like closer proximity to the quarterback. It's easier to get him one-on-one shots that the quarterback can hit because he's closer. It's an easier throw. So for all those reasons, that boundary receiver in general is often like where you want your top target. And then additionally, Sark likes to move the Z around and use him for like perimeter screens and RPOs. Get him out of the boundary and like motion him to the wide side of the field, to get a quick throw or to line him up on a linebacker or something. So that, for both those reasons, the Z is going to usually get a higher volume of targets no matter what because he's closer to the quarterback. And then because of that, probably, Sark also tends to use that guy for some of his different gadget plays and shot plays where he's moving him around to find opportunities to burn people.
All right, great. So now you've got your X, you've got your Z. Now, talk to me a little bit about the H. This is the slot receiver. But before we go into that, I want to hear a quick word from our sponsor.
This video is brought to you by Luxe Kitchen and Bath. Luxe has been offering high-end kitchen and bathroom remodels for 3 generations throughout the greater Austin area. With 5-star review after 5-star review on Google and Facebook, and an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, you can put your faith in Luxe Kitchen and Bath's award-winning designers and skilled craftspeople to bring to life that dream vision of your special home. But that's not all. Luxe's all-star team provides full remodels, large additions, and even commercial build-outs as well. So call Luxe Kitchen and Bath at 833-358-LUXE today. Or visit luxekitchenbath.com to discover where quality meets luxury and begin the process of transforming your home. Get a free quote today by calling 833-358-LUXE. That's LUXE. Or by visiting luxekitchenbath.com. Link in the description.
The H receiver. So this is the guy that swings in and out of the personnel package. When Texas is in a spread, like I've drawn here, the H is a slot receiver. So it was like Jordan Whittington or who was it? Who was it in 20? That was 23, right? 24, it was DeAndre Moore, usually. Sometimes Silas Bolden. And if Texas plays with two tight ends, that slot receiver either moves outside and sends one of the outside receivers to the bench, or he goes to the bench. And the H spot becomes your smaller receiving-oriented tight end, generally. So like anytime Texas played with 12 personnel when they had Jatavian Sanders would be the H. Last year, Gunnar Helm was the only true in-line tight end they had. So Gunnar Helm would stay at the Y, and Juan Davis would come in at the H. And it would become almost like a fullback. When it's flexed out into space like this as a slot receiver, the big thing you notice about the H is that he has a lot of space to go left or right. He doesn't have a sideline hemming him in. He may or may not even have a defender directly across from him. And so he has kind of easier access to get out his first few steps of his route and try to find open space. So usually your slot receiver ends up, this is why, for anybody that remembers the 2000s, Texas Tech seemed to always have a white dude of roughly mine or your stature, only much faster, on either side in the slot, and they were just perpetually open. You're like, how in the world can we not cover that guy? Surely he's not that fast. He looks like Ian or LC. But that's the name of the game. If you have a slot that can get down the field, that's great. But those safeties are so far back that it can be challenging to just run. It's not. You can't just run by somebody like you could outside when they're lined up close to you. Probably it's just a little more nuance and quickness, and so it's often more of a possession receiver. Or for some offenses, it's like a flexed out running back where you're just throwing them quick passes and then letting them do all their work after the catch. Sark likes them to basically do everything. He loves if he can send them deep to occupy safeties, maybe just so he can get an outside receiver one-on-one with a corner. He also likes when these guys can play close to the formation and block. Because Sark talks a lot to the Shanahan school guys in the NFL, they're always trading insights on how to motion physical receivers closer to the action and then use them to like block a linebacker unexpectedly or go pick off a safety or just muck up the defense's run fits and make guys do things that they don't want to do, like especially make corners find out where they're supposed to fit and make a tackle when corners don't really want to do that. So Stark is not really he's not really like a let's get a little water bug or a flex running back. He's kind of like, let's get a physical receiver in here that knows how to get open in space, but can also be like almost like tight end.
I feel like when people are talking about recruiting a lot, and there's a particular kid that profiles as an athlete, that is to say they're probably just a really good athlete, football player. They don't necessarily know where to put them. Mm-hmm. Slot always kind of comes up in the discussion, whether they end up there or not. I feel like that is always a part of the discussion on where you're going to put this super athletic kid.
Yeah, that's largely for what I've basically laid out is that you can do a million different things with that guy. Like he can be sort of like a pseudo tight end. He can be a pseudo running back, or he can be like a diminutive get open receiver in the middle of the field. And so if you have an athlete where you're like, we're not exactly sure what this guy's going to be best at, but we're pretty sure he's going to be good at like football.
Right.
There's going to be something he's good at.
Yeah.
If we can just get him into space and make it easy, I bet he'll be really good. Then the slot is an obvious place to put a guy like that, because you can just, if you're flexible enough in your scheme, like a lot of spread offenses can be, that it's like, yeah, let's just get this guy. We'll turn the slot receiver into whatever kind of weapon he is.
That makes sense. All right. Well, there you have it. So we just wanted to go through this a little bit because we've talked all the way through the different, not necessarily iterations, but different nuances of the spread offense. Talked about defensive positions, but Ian and I were talking, we really haven't gone through the different roles of the wide receiver. I wouldn't put it past us to have a wide receiver 201 where we maybe go into some route trees. Who knows? Who knows what the future will hold? But in the interim, we really appreciate you being here. We hope this added a little bit of color and understanding to the game. So when you're watching, you can understand why the receivers are profiling the way they are and potentially doing what they need to be doing. Anything else you want to add, Ian, before we close this out?
Our current expectation for the 2025 season is that Ryan Wingo would play the Z. DeAndre Moore would stay in the slot at H, and Stanford transfer Emmett Mosley, fifth of that name, would play outside at the X. To me, it actually makes more sense that Mosley would play in the slot because he's physical, he's really good working over the middle, and then Moore could play outside at X. But that does not appear to be the direction Texas is going in. So that'll be something interesting to monitor. And then Parker Livingstone is likely to play either the Z or the X in relief of the starters.
Check us out at InsideTexas.com. We'll have more on this as the season progresses, but we really do appreciate you being here. Thanks so much.